So, as a teacher who is worried about everyday atrocities on Dalits or everyday atrocities on women, or even for that matter, farmers' struggle, or for that matter, development discourse, nothing is happening. As if that some elections are the only significant thing, and it is going to change the discourse. Every time 365 days we are debating on elections, we are debating on unproductive things like construction of something which is which is not going to give us bread and butter.
Uh, that typically we start with a question on the intellectual journey, on the personal journey of an invited scholar, the inspirations that the scholar have had in their life, and different kinds of milestones. So, to go back and to try and understand your intellectual and personal journey.
Basically, I come from a place which is called Chinnagorpadu, which is a village, a small village near Pakala Mandal, and in a Chittoor district of Andhra Pradesh. I after my plus two from my native place near a small town where it was a kind of I'm from a government school background. I have studied till 5th class. There was a railway school which is known at that point of time, and then that there was no English medium school. So I was forced to move from English medium to Telugu medium, and it was like neither I was English, I gained proficiency in English nor in Telugu. So there was no much schools also those days. It was only one school. That too, it was precisely because it was the place where I studied. It's a major railway junction between Guntakal and Renigunta. Tirupati, near Tirupati.
Yeah.
So that's why to cater the many children who come from different language backgrounds also, this school was there. So then till plus two I studied there, and then I moved to graduation. That is a break for me. And in Andhra, and that was United Andhra. At that time there was a government-run residential junior colleges and degree colleges were there. Very interesting concept that the residential degree colleges or junior colleges is continuing. It is still continuing even after this privatization or massive changes in the educational system. So there was only two colleges in United Andhra, one in Kurnool Silver Jubilee College and one in Nagarjuna Sagar, which is a very mega water dam. The then Prime Minister Nehru, in fact, was the brain behind that. The modern temples, which is called. So I joined in Nagarjuna Sagar for my graduation. So what happened? Very interesting thing I would like to share. Here, one of my teacher, whom I will never forget, and I take this teacher's name with every student who struggle with confidence. Even till now, I will keep this teacher. Maybe even before death, I would remind this teacher. This teacher made a pertinent statement, one statement, which changed my further intellectual journey. So what he asked me when I wrote my first unit test, because from my native place to Nagarjuna Sagar, it is almost 12 hours journey. It was a residential degree college. So when I wrote my first unit test, he called me. His name is Dr. Narayan Reddy. He is retired now. Still I am in touch with him. So he called me and he said, Sukumar, you traveled 12 hours to write in Telugu. So that day I left writing in Telugu. No, with due respect on the mother tongue. I don't have any issues with mother tongue concepts. So that sentence, one sentence, changed my entire academic journey. If he would have not said that on that day, probably I would have not been in Delhi University today with this kind of confidence, number one. So there I met many students from different regional concerns, regional in the sense within Andhra. It's like Rayalaseema, Telangana, all this, and it's for us it's a kind of cosmopolitan within the state. The year we left the graduation, that was the year where the Mandal Commission was in a very heated thing that was happening.
Oh.
So it was like, and also for us, there were few teachers in that college, like the present principal, who is YNS Chowdhury, and my history teacher, Rajendra Prasad. Those teachers were all the graduation teachers. They used to tell us that JNU, HCU, they're all, you people can easily crack entrances. They used to say, don't worry, you go, you write entrance, you will get it. Don't think about people who speak hi-fi English, who doesn't have any subject. I'm not saying that they don't have, but the way they encouraged us is, today I'm happy that Divyendu, you made me to remember. Of course, I remember these names, but the incident came, and that's why, situation demanded I'm taking their names. So these teachers, they used to tell that, you people can easily. So in the second year itself, only in graduation, when we wrote entrance, just as a trial, so many of our friends, they got into JNU, HCU. So, so that made us to look ahead beyond the boundary, Andhra, whatever it may be. After finishing off this graduation thing, and when I joined in Hyderabad University, 1991, that was a peak of Mandal agitation. And that's why I say many places that I'm a Mandal product. I'm a Mandal product, and I'm a Kota child. I don't feel anything, this thing, because, so after joining in Hyderabad University, it shaped us as not only academically, but also in an activist kind of. So that is how Hyderabad University also played a very significant role in our lives. So I finished my master's. Then I took up my research on caste issues. I still remember one of my junior asked me when I was sitting in library and reading something on conflicts. So this girl, junior, she asked me, whenever we see you read conflicts, why? So I told her something that we get birth in conflicts, we live in conflicts, and we die in conflicts. And,
That's nice.
Because, at that point of time, 1985, Chundur caste carnage happened. And I was doing my MPhil on caste conflicts and factionalism. Party factions, is there any link among them? So I started doing my research with Professor G. Hargopal, who is a very known human rights activist and also very known public intellectual, for that matter. Caste conflicts of Karamchedu, and in 1991, another caste conflict in Chundur, again in United Andhra. So this has shaped not only that, but there was a peak of Naxalite movement. There was an anti-Iraq movement at that point of time. There was a huge, trade union movements, in Hyderabad. So it's a kind of, mixture of all this, outside environment also shaped us as not only students, but also to be actively participating in different issues. I picked up my PhD research on Dr. Ambedkar's perspectives on human rights, because being partly associating with my teacher, I used to go around with him. Probably that is also very a powerful kind of influence on me, because I used to go listen to him, talk to many activists, interacting, all kinds of things. So I started doing my PhD on Ambedkar's perspectives on human rights. Then one more interesting thing which I'd like to tell. In 1999, UGC came out with a circular saying that in MPhil and PhDs, there won't be reservations. The Hari Gautam was the UGC chairman at that point of time. So University of Hyderabad was very actively involved in mobilizing this agitation, and there was 15 days relay hunger strike, which we did in the campus to withdraw that circular, to put pressure. Yeah, we also started coordinating with other university students like JNU by that time, because JNU, that as active as even till today. and it would be, even in future also, that, for that matter.
Yeah.
So we got in touch with JNU people, and then we started communicating to UGC. And incidentally, UGC chairman came for our convocation at that time. So what we did, we around 15 of us who are very active students. So after the convocation, we went and gerawed him. Literally, we gerawed. We surrounded him, and we just said that we pleaded also. I mean, we pleaded and we warned. Pleaded in a very democratically. We said that, look, you are taking our lives by removing reservations, and we are ready to give up our lives. Still, I can recall those sentences which we made. In fact, there were many other organizations. It is not that any movement, for that matter. It's a collective struggle. And partly, because I was slightly neutral, many friends, many people, they came, and they, with a collective effort, we were able to communicate to the UGC chairman, look, if you don't withdraw the circular, we are ready to give up our lives, and we are going to go for a hunger strike. So he promised and he stood for it. That is, I appreciate Hari Gautam. He said that within 48 hours, we will see and we will withdraw it. And within 48 hours, he sent a circular saying that we have withdrawn that letter. Anyway, so from there, what happened? 1999, this happened. 2001, I got an opportunity to teach in Delhi University. In fact, I came to see Delhi, thinking that because, SC students also will get the travel charges. So two of my friends who got this interview letter, so we said, "Arey, chalo, let's go and see, face the interview, and also let's go and move around in Delhi and come back." But we prepared. It's not that, we prepared and we came. And incidentally, the board felt that, they have selected me. I came to know about this in the month of January, I think, 2001. And then 2001, February 19th, I joined in Delhi. Almost 20 years is done. Just last February, I finished my 20 years of my intellectual journey. This is my intellectual journey. I don't know from here where the journey will be going ahead. I'm very open for any kind of, break.
So, how do you see this, like the state of political science in India? And particularly if we go towards this concepts and categories that we have created in political science to understand politics per se. Do you think that these categories and these conceptualizations and this version of political science needs to be reinvented to understand Dalit lived experiences and the realities that they face in their everyday life?
It's very important, thing to be discussed, and if not now, when new educational policies happen, whether it will be inclusive or not, what we need to do is that we need to make it more inclusive. That's one thing. But when I go back and see that, whether the political science subject as a discipline, yes, it is very important. And till 1980s, the subject within the subject discipline, there was not much changes. The core concepts remained. There was not much debate. I mean, the debates within the core concepts that has been was there, like justice, many other concepts like liberty, many other things were there, and it used even within political theory, or even beyond IR or any other sub-disciplines, there was a very limited kind of, pedagogy that was very confined, and not much scope was there to expand it. Probably that generation teachers doesn't want to leave any kind of scope for any other discourse to get into the subject discipline.
That's right.
Now, what happened, 80s and post 80s, 90s, early 90s, due to other factors, like factors like different kinds of social movements, feminist movement, Dalit movement, and then tribal movement. So there were many things that happened outside the classroom, forced the classroom to introduce these new, like for example, see, it was a very, social movements was studied as social movement, like, new social movements, because of different kinds of, struggles and different kinds of academic interventions, the binary, or the thing has been widened. The sub-discipline, this thing has widened. And
Right.
what I see after 1990s, first generation of backward castes were already there. Teachers. Because in this, teachers, played a are still playing a very important. Even first generation of Dalit teachers, due to implementation of reservations, they started entering into the universities. Otherwise, universities and pedagogy is highly exclusive. So there was a very it's a very conservative kind of thing which used to continue, and that has been attempted to break. These first generation scholars, they attempted to break that conservative. I'll give you 2-3 examples. Before I joined in Delhi University, I'm even till today, I'm a only reserved scheduled caste teacher, reserved quota teacher, though it is supposed to be much in number. There are the universities yet to be filled the permanent positions. So when I joined, my post specialization was modern Indian political thought. In my appointment letter itself, it says as lecturer within bracket Indian political thought. So the moment I joined in Delhi University, I looked the syllabus, and interestingly, that the syllabus, with due respect on the institutions, now it is highly inclusive. I can say that it needs to be more inclusive. That's a different thing. There is nothing, a finished agenda. I requested colleagues, when there was a revision of the syllabus, almost, in 2002 or 3, the revision of syllabus happened after 1978, I guess, in Delhi University.
Oh.
It was a long, I think 87, 88, they revised the syllabus. And then after that, there was no, that is what I'm saying, see that before 87 and after 87 to 2001, there was a huge kind of, gap. So only confined, syllabus, there was never attempted for any kind of pedagogical changes. So limited resources, whatever. I requested colleagues to stop teaching Indian political thought on thematic basis. So they asked me, why should we change? So I said that, look, every teacher is a biased by nature. Many, at least, ideological, or if not, but within the classroom, they might maintain some neutrality, and they must do that. They must respect the other perspectives also. But at the same time, my concern was there at that point of time. And I also took the feedback from others that, who are the thinkers used to be referred while teaching the concepts, like themes, like, for example, equality. So when it comes to equality, Ambedkar was never being taught in this Delhi. I gave the reason that, look, there is a possibility of excluding certain thinkers while teaching the theme. Any theme can be taught in referring to one or two thinkers who are very familiar with the teacher, or maybe who are very familiar with their works. So there is a kind of, exclusionary kind of thing. So I told them that, look, we need to change it. And at least I convinced colleagues that, this thematic way needs to be changed. And we introduced modern Indian political thinkers on thinker base. So my idea of demanding that is that there must be at least one thinker, major thinker from different strands. Like, first time we had Ambedkar in the syllabus. So similarly, many other, like in the context of, when debating about, a Muslim thinker comes in. I don't brand Ambedkar as only a Dalit thinker, but maybe for the sake of, reference, I am just giving a political thinker, like, a Dalit political thinker. Dalit, I am putting it in inverted commas. So that was one major thing that, happened. So when Ambedkar comes into the syllabus, then the entire disciplinary discourses changes. That's what I mean.
That's right.
And then what happened after, then I thought human rights, because I was part of human rights program in University of Hyderabad with my teacher, actively working to the program. I proposed democracy and human rights in India. So even still that paper is continuing. And partly after Thorat includes, Professor Thorat included social exclusion more actively into the UGC curriculum, UGC, that social exclusion centers. So I proposed social exclusion theory and practice in the same part. And slowly, Many other, there were many other changes also happened in the pedagogy, no doubt in that. I mean, people started bringing different teachers, new colleagues joined, different people, they want to bring their perspectives into that, and it started becoming inclusive. Now, why I'm telling that, before 2001 or even from 1987 to 2001, there was no any change in this. So this from 2001 to maybe, partly, 2014, there was a major, changes that happened. 3 times or 4 times, between many other things come. Yeah, that was one interesting thing. Second thing, 4-year undergraduate program. When 4-year undergraduate program came in, I, with many other colleagues, there were many other colleagues in Delhi University, college colleagues who teaches in different colleges, and some scholars at that point of time, teachers come activists, whom I know very well. So they proposed an interesting paper, Understanding Ambedkar. Then since I am being in the department, requested me, and I also took a lead of this entire group. There are many colleagues, I should be very thankful, and I'm very thankful to many colleagues. It's again a collective. So we thought, we proposed, that paper. And Divyendu, you don't believe, in committee of courses, when the discussion happened, it is on record, and I would like to specify it, I don't mind, out of 3 hours that has been discussed, all the papers, a wide range of papers has been discussed. Out of 3 hours, I guess probably on this paper, only on this paper, the discussion went on around for 2 hours. Whether to have it exactly titled, why only Ambedkar? The first question comes in, but there are many colleagues who really supported a lot, no doubt in that. But there was a lot of reluctance to accept such kind of papers. There was Gandhi. I read Gandhi, I read Savarkar, I read Nehru, I read Periyar, I read Ambedkar, I read Tarabai Shinde. As a teacher, we are supposed to read every perspective, and you try to deconstruct in a very valid way. If you have a reason. So what happened? Colleagues from different streams, see how they feel the heat. That is what I mean to emphasize. Some colleagues said, why only Ambedkar? Why can't Gandhi and Ambedkar? Look, there is a purpose, academic purpose why Ambedkar need to be studied. And when I joined in 2001, there was nothing like Ambedkar widely being debated. Slowly things changed, over a period of time. There were many teachers whom we used to meet and discuss, some organizations. Also, we started in the university, were very politically active, and there were many other things. I don't want to get into that politics, right? So I vociferously went on defending that why this course is important. And I said that, caste is not though caste is a vantage point where Ambedkar enters into different conceptual understanding. He understood democracy through caste. He understood, many other things like, constitution and constitutional aspects through caste, Many things he tried to poverty. He tried to understand, poverty through caste. Many other things for that matter. He tried to understand religion through. Then I went on defending that, look, there are many other things that need to be understood. When any student need to be understood, Ambedkar, it should not be narrowed down to only reservations or a bit of constitution making. We need to bring Ambedkar as much as possible as he worked in different disciplines. Because, this is an interdisciplinary paper. That is what exactly. Philosophy, the economics, social work. I'm just naming few. So different history, different disciplines which he engaged, his ideas need to be introduced. So again, why only Ambedkar? Why can't we bring 4 or 5 Dalit scholars, Dalit thinkers? Then I said, if this is the case, I will happily withdraw. And I gave my defense to each and every concerns and objections. Concerns/objections has been raised. Right. Finally, with the support of colleagues, it has been passed. And that is one of the popular optional paper which is still being opted by other than political science students in the university colleges. So that is one thing. Then in the process, I thought that in 2014, when I become professor, perhaps I should be thankful to Delhi University because it recognized the merit which the others argue. That is not the merit what I am talking about. I don't want to valorize the word merit. They recognized my academic caliber. And then also because of reservation and first time, probably I think I'm the first professor, if I'm not wrong, has been directly appointed from assistant professor to professor. And
That's
also
right.
intermediary kind of things happen. So after 2014, one interesting development happened. Many friends, colleagues joined different perspectives, and that's very interesting and important also. I mean, so different ideological interests also comes into the syllabus. So I welcome it because I don't know about others whether they welcome it or not, but I welcome it. So there were many papers, new papers has been introduced. So I thought, to be politically correct, academically inclusive, that we need to bring different perspective into the Indian political.
True.
Otherwise, I used to work on poverty. I started working on higher education. No doubt in that. My research went on around higher education, inclusion, caste discrimination, all these things. Still it is happening. But pedagogically, I thought first time, let me introduce two more papers because my post-specialization is Indian political thought, and I felt from 2014 or even before that also, whenever syllabus was used to happen, there used to be a huge debates on Indian political thought, which thinker to be in, what perspective to be in. So I thought, let the Ambedkar, paper which is being introduced, not for non-political, I mean, though for its non-political science, but I want that kind of perspective to be continued in masters. So I introduced Ambedkar in contemporary, because in contemporary, how his ideas are something to do with contemporary. That is one thing. I felt, from the long back, when I first introduced Ambedkar, it was a struggle. And then later on, after, teaching 14, 15 years, my career, I felt that Indian political thought is highly Brahminical and exclusive, or a one-sided perspective.
Right.
One-sided, nationalistic, cultural, dominant Hindu cultural perspective, or dominant perspective.
Exactly.
So I thought that there are different perspectives need to be introduced, and I felt that Dalit Bahujan political thought. Now I don't know why this political is missing in the syllabus, but we originally introduced with the title Dalit Bahujan political thought, as if that Dalit Bahujan thought is not political. That could be the reason why it has been removed once it goes up to the university floor.
Perhaps it might be unsettling for some.
Yeah, could be. But it hardly matters. It all depends on how I interpret or how any teacher interprets. So everything is political. Nothing is other non-political. So finally, what happened? Other college colleagues, because committee of courses need to be approved. So I bought Dalit Bahujan Thought, the paper title, which is now, and it hit on the headlines when Professor Kancha Aileya's books have been referred in that, whether Dalit can be used or not. The word Dalit, in a couple of years, I'm sure you might be knowing about this controversy, like, why I'm not a Hindu. Then God as a political philosopher, because, I introduced his book, God as a political philosopher, to understand Buddha
Right.
Buddha and its democracy in Buddhism. So that is one thing, and I successfully defended, and there was a huge kind of backlash on their initiative to change whatever it may be, and my department fully supported, cutting across ideologies. My entire colleagues stood with me, saying that no, this is wrong. Nothing is supposed to be changed like this, and we are with you, and it happened like that. The only thing which is missing now, I feel and I felt, and in fact I announced this in JNU public talk, I want to introduce before I retire, or whenever there is any opportunity which comes, I want to introduce women political thinkers, particularly in Indian political. Why is that? There were many women who really played a significant role. Their ideas are being completely missing. I feel that this gap need to be filled, and I'm prepared for it. Whenever any opportunity comes, I would like to do that.
As we have seen that there was a time in 1960s and 70s that Dalit literature was very much flourishing. And it was, in fact, very much powerful and strong enough to raise the consciousness of the Dalit population. But in contemporary times, what we have seen, perhaps Dalit literature has not been so much effective as it used to be in 1960s or 70s. Instead, there are certain new platforms that are emerging, like Facebook and social networking websites and cinematic narrations. So what we see that Dalit activism is now penetrating into these emerging platforms and using it to assert as well as resist the power structure, which was earlier dominated by the upper caste. So how do you see this new emerging penetration of Dalit newer kinds of platforms?
So there are two things which you referred, Divyan. One, 60s to 70s and that early form of literature and how that literature has contributed towards to movement. Certainly, it was a very interesting phase where, there was not much other platforms. Literature is one thing which has influenced a lot. In every region, in every state, or in every language, the unheard voices of small poets, story writers, oral history, storytellers, okay, n number. If because I'm familiar with Telugu, two of my friends, they're teaching in degree colleges in two different colleges in Andhra, one in Telangana and one in Andhra. Dr. Narayan Rao, who is a Telugu lecturer in a degree college in Vikarabad, and Dr. Vijayanand Raju, who is right now teaching somewhere in some college in Vijayawada. They both, what they did, Vijayanand Raju tried to look around 520 Dalit writers in different forms.
That's quite huge.
Around, excluding 13 to 14 known Dalit authors for the mainstream literature, literary domain. Similarly, Narayan Rao did specifically in a particular district called Prakasham district, Dalita Rachayitalu, the Dalit writers in Prakasham. Why I'm giving this example is literature in different languages, Dalit literature, and also liberative theology. Literature is also liberative, and it contributed a lot for, ideas of equality, justice, all these kind of. So they played very important role, and that was the only platform writings, that is why those days it was very confined, vibrant and confined, and it has its own impact on movement, Dalit movement. I have been influenced by few writers like Katti Padma Rao, who is a Sanskrit faculty and who played a very significant role in Dalit movement in United Andhra. Even still he is alive, and he wrote many books. He wrote on atheism, he wrote on Buddhism, he wrote on Ambedkarism, he wrote on critiques on Hinduism. Okay, small books. Similarly, Bojja Tarakam, who was a lawyer, he came out with a small book called, Polisulu Arrestu Cheste. If police arrests you, what you have to do. Small, a very known lawyer. What I mean to say, like such kind of people, there are many hundreds and hundreds of people who influenced them, influenced Dalits in different states at that point. So that is how the movement becomes very strong. You take Punjab, you take UP, you take Madras, Tamil Nadu, you take Maharashtra, wherever, this Dalit consciousness that has emerged, literature played a significant. Now coming to most, late 90s and then 2000, where, technology and many other things and, the social media, different social media platforms, it is not vibrant now. There I see these are all providing space for people who can express their support and dissent of different activities. Okay. Even one paragraph, one small image or one small write-up can go to different kinds of people, through this, WhatsApp, through Facebook. There are disadvantages, no doubt in that. Some focused kind of work is not happening. But certainly these new spaces are playing an important role. No doubt. Maybe they might be scattered. The ideas getting scattered different directions. But somewhere I think, social media platforms, because mainstream media is completely biased now. I stopped watching.
Exactly.
I stopped watching TV precisely because of Republic. Let me put it on record. That doesn't mean other TVs are very fair enough, because the way you are, debating on certain unproductive things or is simply, I don't know, maybe for that channel that there are viewers for that channels and they are very happy with that. But for me personally, I felt otherwise I used to watch all, at least NDTV, Republic and many other, but now I stopped watching TV precisely because mainstream media is not debating on the issues which they are supposed to. So, as a teacher who is worried about everyday atrocities on Dalits or everyday atrocities on women, or even for that matter farmers struggle, or for that matter development discourse, nothing is happening. As if that Some elections are the only significant thing, and it is going to change the discourse. Every time 365 days we are debating on elections, we are debating on unproductive things like construction of something which is which is not going to give us bread and butter.
Exactly.
We are not debating on poverty. We are not debating on anything else. Happy index, is something which is very, bothering. See, these platforms are playing an important role in mobilizing opinion, both pro and against. Okay, whatever. Yeah. I'm not saying referring to any one particular. This is the only platform, and that is where even state is now trying to limit the debates or discussions, what is happening within the social media. For Dalit movement, social media is also playing a very significant role. And there I see that both literature, movement, even academics for that matter, there are many other, the first generation, like I see that many people who are working very seriously, contributing for, intellectual this thing, it is playing a very important role.
As you are aware that struggles and resistances of marginalized communities, and it's not only about Dalit community, but also about minority communities, their struggles, their resistance is increasingly being delegitimized by the state on the pretext of progressive development. And somehow it seems to be that even many, if not all, Dalit communities are consuming to this kind of narrative, this kind of discourse. So how do you reflect on this?
No, look, it's not, you're right. It's not the Dalits. It is the entire country is in stake now. It is the entire country is in stake, not just Dalits.
Exactly.
Probably today it would be, farmers, or maybe before this it would be, it would have been, it was minorities. Before that it was students. Maybe, some other day it would be teachers, or some other day it would be businessmen, or it's business also. Why only five to six Gujarat-based businessmen become rich? Why not any other state businessman, as if that there is no any other businessman or businesswoman or business entrepreneurs, and they can't be, So what I mean to say here is that, in different domains, different communities who are being engaged, even within business also, they're all facing some kind of, very gross, I don't know how to put it. It's a very, very disturbed state of, thing that is happening today. In my entire conscious career, let me put it, I am 52 years now, 38 year conscious career. I haven't seen, people are feeling so much so distressed. I've seen pandemic. That is the worst thing which I have seen, like people who are walking on the streets, who has been disowned by the people who exploited, they sucked the blood of these, communities. I'm not saying that only Dalits here. There are many communities who migrated to different places, and they have been thrown out on the roads. They have been disowned by the state, disowned by the, communities, or disowned by the middle class, especially, working class.
Exactly.
Completely, So where are we heading? Are we heading towards to a kind of, is the state, what kind of Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas is a very good idea, I'm telling you. Very good idea. But in practice, nothing is happening. It has become a political rhetoric. Sabke Saath, Sabka Vikas has become a political rhetoric. You need to have a vision, economic vision for it. You need to have an inclusive vision for it. It is not that, by just saying that, or maybe you can project some, there is no number these days. I don't know, state is not believing in numbers. For the past many years, I'm seeing 4 or 5 years, probably even before that number was manipulated. I'm not saying even 2000 before also number was manipulated by the state. Because itna log literary ho gaya, itna benefits mil raha hai. Okay, now there is now the number itself is missing. So development cannot achieved by just, selling the public companies. The public companies, it is going to destroy the reservation policy, which is, reservations are inclusive. Like public, sectors are being sold out. What kind of social justice can be achieved in a public institutions where reservations are not being implemented? Now you are closing it down, showing that there are losses. I'm not an economics person, but very funny. Suddenly some private company comes in and then your public sector need to be closed down. This credit goes to the first NDA team. Disinvestment ministry, a separate ministry has been created. If this is the case, what kind of jobs you can generate, what kind of development that you will achieve. Ambedkar very wisely proposed the constitution with many other contemporaries at that point of time as a chairman. Article 37, 38, 39, 40, it says clearly wealth should not be concentrated in few hands. Why did he say that? There is something called constitutional morality that need to be taught to all the politicians, to all the corrupt bureaucrats, and to all the corrupt minds in this country. That's where I see, development cannot be achieved by doing just only few things. Social democracy, economic democracy is important to achieve, to make this political democracy much more vibrant. Ambedkar was very clear about it. Now, Dalits getting into this kind of this thing. Dalits, now because, till now, there was nobody who really, that's what Ambedkar and Kanshiram rightly said. What Congress and Gandhi have done to untouchables. Till, the same thing is happening. Now, some kind of, crumbles is being thrown and they are looking for it. But certainly they will realize, they already realized, they will realize it's not that, the politics of divisive politics. It is because of divisive politics.
Exactly.
Which is being followed by the political, parties. Otherwise, Dalit movement is still alive. They will challenge this state and they will give a meaningful to the democracy. I'm putting things in a very positive way. So Dalits getting into that development discourse because never they had any kind of things. So now they are getting something. So they are very happy. But ideological churning is necessary within the Dalit discourse. Self-retrospection is very important. And that is where I see that, so सबके साथ सबका विकास तभी होगा that, the lowest rung, any caste, any community for that matter. I'm not saying only Dalits, tribal minorities or women are the worst victims of this development. Are we able to address the problem? So, that's why Ambedkar, again, let me bring, he said, the nation's progress can measure only when women are progressed and the nation will progress.
Yeah,
so this is how one can see the development, So I think all these, politicians, they need to revisit not only Ambedkar, they must revisit Ambedkar, they must revisit Nehru. They had visionary, they may have there might be biased on certain levels, but I am sure that Ambedkar would have not been a very biased person, but rather than others. I'm not taking the sides precisely because I have done something on Ambedkar. Okay, and you see that he is very clear what he spoke. So we need to reintroduce these their ideas to the political groups.
You also talked about the Dalit movement is continuously going on and it will go on. But at the same time, what we see that somehow Dalit politics in hardcore political situation is somehow declining in a sense that BSP is not now in a position to really challenge the big sweep of the ruling government. And some people have started also saying that BSP's time has gone now. So how do you see Dalit politics, not only in the political sphere, but also how movement would be very important platform?
The idea of Kanshiram, the idea of Ambedkar is still alive. And the idea of Dalit politics is still alive. What is not alive is the leadership. I see there is a gray in leadership precisely because there was a time when Kanshiram visited all over the country and the BSP has become a very powerful political party. It started at a state like UP, Uttar Pradesh, where a conservatism is flourishing. So it's like, I see it as BSP's success as revolution. Ambedkar's work, revolution and counter-revolution.
Right.
Buddhism and Hinduism. This is a clash between revolution and counter-revolution. I see it right now
Exactly.
as a counter-revolution by the Hindutva forces, which are more into the political front now. Now the question is that in politics, anything can happen in a democracy. We can't say that Dalit politics is failed completely because some other party has come in. Now, as I said, there is a gray area where leadership concerns are there. Now I see there is a hope of new leadership that are being emerged. That's what I mentioned. I wrote in some paper that people like Chandrasekhar Azad. One may agree with him or not. That's a different thing. Azad is there as an alternative, this thing. And you see that Jignesh Mevani, though his, there is a limitation for all these, leaders who have emerged. VCK, Tirumavallavan from Tamil Nadu.
Yeah.
Okay. And of course, Prakash Ambedkar in Maharashtra. So there are certain hopes still are there. We don't know. Maybe some new leaders might also emerge, because whenever I move around, I talk to people. They are very conscious. Many Dalit groups, they are very conscious. Only thing which is lacking is that ideologically we need to connect these groups, different groups that have been scattered. Okay, and the politics are taking advantage out of it. Whether Dalits are getting into right-wing politics, left-wing politics, or center politics, they're getting, because till 1990s, nobody has bothered about them. So now they are getting some kind of small leadership thing, and they are getting into that. But lately, they will realize and they will come back. It may take time. It may take time. Over a period of time, this leadership need to come together. Self-retrospection is very important within Dalit leadership today.
Exactly.
If it is not going to happen, then there is a danger. And who will play, how it is going to happen, I think, future will decide. But certainly with groups like, BAMSEF, groups, there are many, Ambedkar social justice groups in the name of Ambedkar, Periyar, or even for that matter, Phule. They will come back, they will strike back, and history will keep on repeating. Today, it is some other party. Maybe after 50 years, I have a hope that today's party may not be in a position to win 1 or 2 seats. That culturally it needs to be, again reconstructed. The society. So Ambedkarism, what I mean to say, an ideology, will certainly strike into politics, and if there is a right leadership and committed leadership, I stand there.
That the present dispensation or the ruling party is somehow appropriating various leaders or the legacy of the various leaders, except Nehru. Apart from Nehru, like they have Ambedkar appropriation. They tried to appropriate Ambedkar. They also tried to appropriate Gandhi. So how do you reflect on this?
The day the present establishment came into the power, they are very strategic about their politics. And I appreciate really their, one needs to learn from the present establishment. Okay. And I have a very high this thing for them, because this is politics. After all, these are all politics, and they are very selective. Appropriation also, they are very selective. Number one, I'll give you 2-3 instances. 2015, after 14 elections, Ayangali has been the first person to be appropriated by the present establishment. After that, Tiruvalluvar, Tamil Nadu. Then after that, Rani Ganjallu, Northeast. Okay?
Yeah.
And Ambedkar, for them it is compulsory, not only for them. And I thank RSS, BJP, by attempting to appropriate selectively. Ambedkar has become wider debatable personality, including in the left discourse. Let me be very honest on that. Left is trying to now everybody, including different ideologies, like everybody started owning Ambedkar when RSS and BJP started owning Ambedkar. Okay, good or bad. We all know about it, and that is where 125 years of special edition of RSS magazine, Panchajanya.
Yeah.
Came out with a special issue, 125 years, and I wrote a piece against their write-up in the how they try to appropriate, Ambedkar. So I wrote a piece in, and it has been published in Mainstream and many other blogs also. It has been translated into different languages. This is Gobalsi and Doublespeak, Ambedkar and RSS. Okay. So it is being very selectively they are appropriating these personalities. Okay. But they can't appropriate Periyar, I'm telling you. I challenge from this floor, can they appropriate Periyar? They can't. Because they knew that the moment they touch Periyar or, thinkers like Ambedkar, within Ambedkar, there are many other thinkers. His philosophy of Hinduism, they never debate about that. Okay, what I mean to say here is that these are all politics. It is a kind of appeasement politics by appropriating and saying by wearing a full blue coat on April 14th and, giving a lecture is not going to be a thing, So there are few people will be there so that they will get into the trap. Because the other who gets into their trap is also, Kanshiram wrote a very interesting book called Chemchai. I don't need to explain that, I guess. So there are many political chamchas, who try to, go and get into the trap. A serious, ideological, politically or socially conscious Dalit would never get into these kind of traps, number one. Number two, opportunities, you are giving an opportunity. Maybe, some people are going for opportunities. I don't say that they should not go, but they should realize what is their space within given that opportunity. And if they realize, the day they realize that there is no space for them in decision making or even leading the country, they'll come back, and that is going to happen. And it is already there. It is being already there. It's all manipulative and appeasement politics. So this selective way of owning is a problem. And I really don't agree with that. You want Ambedkar's image to be used. You want Ambedkar to be, for your own political purpose. You don't want his ideas to be propagated. He stood arch against the cultural ideology which the present establishment is doing. So I see there is a contradiction within their own appropriation, and that contradiction they need to address. Then only that can become meaningful contradiction. No, otherwise there is no point in picking up one point and projecting, and other 99 points they're leaving. That is meaningless. That is not good for even for their own progress also. Somebody will question, if not today, tomorrow, then what is going to happen? That's the thing.
Do you think that the contemporary situation has become quite different from what it used to be in 1950s or 1940s when Ambedkar started writing the constitution itself? Do you think that the thoughts and ideas of Ambedkar needs to be reinvented in contemporary society in a way to capture the varieties of changes that has happened in the contemporary society? For instance, the idea of social is itself changing, constantly changing. The idea of political is constantly changing, and the human nature, foundational human nature, is also somehow changing towards a different kind of texture. So, how do you see Ambedkar needs to be reinvented in contemporary India? In what sense?
The ideas are so relevant. It becomes automatic if we make the pedagogical concerns. Pedagogy plays a very important role. You don't need to be biased. No need to be biased. I'm neither saying that only Ambedkar. You read Tarabai Shinde. How do you democratize relationships within men and women in the society? She wrote wonderfully. Stri Purusha Tulna. How many teachers they teach Tarabai Shinde? How many teachers they teach many other thinkers who spoke about the everyday relationships between people as their thought processes. Nationalism or, culture. All these things need to be discussed in different perspectives. Exactly. Then only the contemporary situation. See, there is nothing. There was a lacuna, and also still there is a lacuna. I'm not saying that only presently. I mean, it is only in present times the things are becoming very open. But previously also the same political clot moved to the present establishment clot. Okay, the same blood is flowing in the other party. That's it. There is no much change. Okay, the only thing is that what as a civil society concept I really like, but we are living in a very uncivil society. Okay, where many issues are there. I mean, I don't want to get into that uncivility. But what I mean to say here is that I mean, we need to democratize the relationships. How do we do that? We must do it through education. Education is the only tool which can change the people. It is not that
That's right.
because until unless, and not just only education, a meaningful education. We are all educated now. Even an educated people who behaves like a beast is not a educated. Education it needs to be fulfilled with ethics and morals. And a social commitment, towards to that ethics and morals is very important. And that kind of education will certainly make people to think about a very just society, an egalitarian, just society. So, I see that, the very much necessary for that. I mean, the right moment, right now is that, well, there is a kind of, changes from 1950s. That was different. 1980s, things are different. 2000, things were different. 2021, today's date is 16th March 2021 is different. And maybe, after 20 years, things might be different. But we need to build a kind of, plan, for future plan, that the relationships must be based on what Ambedkar argued. He was very vociferously arguing for equality, justice, and fraternity.
Exactly.
Until unless these three things are being debated by the political class, let Parliament debate on equality, justice, and fraternity. Only these three, enough to change this society. I'm telling you.
Right.
Let them not debate on any other thing. What I mean to say here is that if at all they really are committed towards to democracy or democratic institutional setups or functionality of the democracy, they must focus on these three. The day they focus on these three, at least maximum problems can be the problems can be reduced. I'm not saying that everything can be settled down. It takes time, and we are all needs to look forward for that change.
Right. It's always needs to be, or it's always good to be hopeful towards a better future. And this could be a very interesting and very important thought to imbibe. Like, having meaningful education is extremely important for democratizing the social relationships. Here, I just want a brief comment of yours. Once Ambedkar wrote, and I am just remembering that line, like, we are entering into the life of contradictions where we will have political equality, but not equality, social and economic life. But the last part of this, how long are we going to continue with this life of contradictions? If this will continue for long, people would blow up the structure of political democracy.
Yeah.
So, is it the time about which Ambedkar was talking about?
He, in fact, when Pune Pact thing happened, and goes to Gandhi, and Gandhi pretends that he doesn't see Ambedkar, and then somebody goes and murmurs in his ears that Ambedkar came. So Gandhi, interestingly, try to inquire about the purpose and other things. Then one statement what Ambedkar says that point of time has its own relevance with what he said, that today we are entering into the era of contradictions, and as soon as if we don't address these contradictions, the same people will blow out the constitution.
Yeah, right.
That point of time he tells to Gandhi that Gandhi, I don't have homeland, and his brief write-up waiting for visa speaks volumes of the caste ridden society which is more problematic, not only at that time, even in contemporary India. There is not much change has happened. When it comes to the last question, people pretend that, they respect Dalits, they caste is nothing, everything. It is all a kind of, eyewash. The more now, the caste is more, vigorous, more, vociferously operating now.
Exactly.
If Ambedkar would have been alive today, he would have demanded and led a movement for separate nation for Dalits.
Okay.
I think you got the gist of the point. One may say that it's a kind of, separatist kind of. No, it's not a separatism. If your own person is not being recognized as an equal citizen, that is the problem where these kind of, ideas crops up.
Yeah.
Hathras incident has taught us many lessons, not only Hathras, but also many, many Dalit women who are being brutally raped. And it has been normalized. Especially rape on any woman is normalized, and rape on Dalit women is legitimized. That is the problem. So, your own citizens are not recognized as an equal citizens. As I said, if Ambedkar would have been alive, Ambedkar would have said that, I don't want all this bloody nonsense, and I want a separate nation, which he has already, put in one of his, writings.
Yeah, exactly.
So that would have been, happened today. So that is what he was hinting. What is happening today is he was hinting, 50 years before, 50, 60, 70 years before.
Exactly.
We need to understand that. If we don't understand him and his ideas, there could be civil war. There could be a civil war. Now, what happened when pandemic happened? If you don't give food, if you don't address, people will go and loot.
Exactly. Right.
One should not take democracy to such an extent. Democracy is such a wonderful, political mechanism that, that one needs to respect the ideas. One needs to take the political agenda that has been given, roadmap that has been given by different kinds of, Nehru, Patel, Ambedkar, many people has given a vision, democratic vision. We need to take his agenda ahead. Otherwise, certainly, his maybe, blowing out the constitution means what? It could be any kind of, democratic, struggle being within the system. It will happen. If the same constitution is not being owned, it is going to happen, and I'm sure that it will happen unless if we don't reduce these contradictions. We need to at least minimize.
Exactly.
If not eradicate. Thank you, and JB.